Today's episode is with Emily Hardy, who is a motherhood support and mindset coach. She's also an instructional designer and the host of the Worthy Mother podcast, which we can all benefit from. She's passionate about challenging the social narratives around motherhood, which I totally relate to. And she used to be an elementary school teacher, and now she's coaching, she's podcasting. She also has two young sons. You live in California, and I'm really excited to have this conversation with you because I too feel like my motherhood journey is a little bit different than what the social norms might, especially within my religion. Up until I think until recently, it's been a little bit different. So, but yes, Emily, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to just get to spend this time chatting about all this good stuff.
Right. Good conversation. I can tell that's what we're both about, is having these really intentional and meaningful conversations. What else should the listeners know about you?
I think that the most important thing to know about me is just like how I have been on this internal transformational journey for the past probably about 5 years since my first son was born. And just that is such a part of my story. And I'm supporting other moms in their own journeys, not necessarily as mothers in terms of like the parenting side of things, but in terms of being human beings who are also raising children in a world where there's a lot of like prescriptive things put on us for that. And so that is just a huge piece of my story, and I'm figuring it all out, right? Like it's I'm right in there I'm right in the journey. But I'm doing it, and I'm just excited to share that.
Yeah, it's really cool. So there's a couple things that came to my mind. So first of all, let's talk about what we think the difference is between the parenting and motherhood, right? Or being a mother and parenting. Let's talk about the difference of those. I think this is important.
I think it is absolutely important. And I actually, in my podcast and intro, I make a very clear statement. This is not a parenthood podcast. I am not a parenthood coach. I'm not someone who, or it's not a parenting podcast, is I guess the word. I'm not a parenting coach. I have my own struggles with parenting my children. It's a daily journey to learn how to handle their big emotions and things like that. And so the difference between parenting and motherhood, when we think about motherhood, a lot of times we think about the act of mothering and the act of like parenting our children. And obviously that is a huge part of it, right? I mean, our kids are a ginormous part of our life. And we, I think it's safe to say that we all want the best for them. We are doing things, learning things, taking things in about how to be the best parents to them. That's part of it. However, we all exist in this world and in this experience of motherhood. And yes, parenting is a part of that, but really there's so many societal factors that contribute to this experience. And it's, working motherhood or choosing to be a stay-at-home mom and having labels that come along with that, and navigating relationships as mothers, and just all the things. It's really this human experience that is impacted by the fact that we're mothers. Again, part of that is that we have children and they impact our experiences. But a lot of it is the external things that impact that experience. And so I think bringing that conversation to light and bringing to light the fact that we all are impacted by the narratives around us, it's so crucial. And I don't think we, before we have kids, we're really told that, and that's not really brought to our awareness.
We're perfect parents before we have kids. Like, wow, how could you just let your child walk around in their pajamas or like light up shoes? Never. Or like, oh, don't you ever wipe your kid's face? And you're like, all of the perfect parenting moves that we're able to do just by watching other people. And so like parenting, we could say, is more like the behavior consequences, how, your schedule, your routine, like how you, really dive in there and make sure they're doing everything that, you want them to do, and keeping on schedule and being fed and like all those things. Right. And I think that a lot of times that is what we like kind of label on ourselves as the value of our motherhood, is how well we think we are doing that, or how much time we're spending doing that, or how exhausted we are by that. That's like a badge of accomplishment, you know? And I know that I've experience thoughts or feelings around this. And I really had to get to a place where I was like, what is a good mom? Like what do I think is a good mom? Because I actually, at the end of the day, I don't believe, for me, the best mom I could be is someone who literally does everything for my children. I don't actually think that my own specific children, which I know we have to be very careful, like, because what we want to encourage is everyone to do and feel what is good and right and true for them. But for me, I'm like, I don't feel like me being completely available all the time for everything they need and doing all the things for them is actually the kind of mother I want to be. Like, I want to encourage them to how to problem solve on their own. I want them to be able to practice, a lot of things for them are practice, like a lot of moms have to put all the laundry away because they need it to look a certain way. And for me, I'm like, it's more important for me to have them practice doing things like that rather than a perfectly organized house. So it's very personal, but I do love that you're bringing this conversation up in your community. And now we get to share this in mine, because I think it's really important to distinguish the difference between the two. Let's go back to the beginning. So you become a mother. You're 23, right? Did you say you?
Yeah. So I had my first son when I was 23, and it was not expected. I was about to go back to get my teaching credential, and my partner and I had been together for quite a few years, but we were not in a place where we were like, oh yeah, we're ready to have kids.
Yeah.
And then we had a kid.
Yeah. Sometimes that happens,
It happens.
So you have your child, and all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm a mom. And something that I have noticed, whether it's in motherhood or business or whatever, a lot of times we just naturally fall into patterns that we have seen, even if they're things that have driven us crazy, that we don't like, or, but as soon as we like just get dropped into it, it's almost like we just step into formation, like, oh, okay, I guess I should be doing this. Did you experience that?
I had an interesting kind of transition. I think
Okay.
when I reflect on my, like, what happened when my son was born, I think a lot of what did end up happening and not being prepared to kind of step into that role and to do it the way that I always thought I would, actually really impacted me prior to kind of this growth that I've done to kind of get out of these shoulds.
Yeah.
Because I ended up going back to school, and we're very fortunate. We live near my parents, and my mom works from home and was able to help with the baby. But I was going to school. I had help, doing all of that. I was overwhelmed with a lot of things going on in life. Like, there was just a lot going on. And, I always thought growing up, there's things that moms are good at, right? They're good at finding things. They're good at juggling a lot of things.
I do think moms are so good at finding things.
Well, so I will say though, like, I thought when I'm really bad at that kind of stuff.
Okay, so
I'm bad at juggling all the pieces. Yeah, no, I totally thought I was gonna have a kid, and like, I'm like, it's probably, you just get good at that when you have kids, right? Like, you just get good at it, and
maybe the older they get, well, yeah, but maybe the older they get, and the more it's this because shoes disappear, right?
Yeah,
shoes
no, they do,
and socks disappear. So maybe now that your child is getting a little bit older, where he's going to be misplacing the socks and the shoes, that's where your real training is going to happen, and then it's
right.
And maybe not. And I think it's important to know that I like that you're saying this, is that you assumed all these things were going to happen or change, but for you they didn't, right?
Yeah,
they totally haven't yet.
It totally was just not like a part of the like the transformation into motherhood. I was like, wait, I still have a hard time with these things.
Yeah.
And we really relied on external help just because of the situation we were in. And I think there were a lot of feelings about that. I will say, like, there was a lot of like, okay, I'm not doing this the way I should do this. This isn't what I thought this was going to look like. But it really, like, I didn't have a choice. It was the situation we were in. And I feel so fortunate now looking back, knowing that really, it was almost like permission, like, okay, wait, I don't have to do this the way that I thought I had to do this. Like
so
my
let's
kids,
hear what the way you thought you needed to. What did that look like?
Yes, I would love to talk about that, because I think that's something we all need to really consider when we're feeling feelings of like, am I doing this wrong? Really getting clear on what is the thought? What do we think is the right way to do it? And a lot of times it's not our, kind of like you were just saying, it's not our standards. It's not the things we actually think, oh, this is the kind of mom I want to be.
Right.
But it's these things we've like just absorbed.
Yes. I was beating myself up. I was beating myself up about things that I actually didn't care about. When I got clear about it, I was like, oh, I'm beating myself up about this. And actually, I don't care about this. I don't actually care. Okay. So what did you think your mothering should look like, or your motherhood?
You know, I think the biggest thing was that I have always wanted to be a mom. I've like, when we would play house as kids, like that was such a huge part of what I wanted. And I think I believed somewhere deep down, even if I couldn't really articulate it, that when I had kids, that would like just bring so much purpose and fulfillment to my life, which, don't get me wrong, it totally, I mean, it did in a way.
Yeah.
However, it was like, okay, I have this child, and I also have such pull and desire to do things for myself. And that wasn't expected. I really did expect that, like, I would be able to pour everything of myself into my child and into these things that we kind of like assume are part of a mother's job, right? Like making sure the house is beautiful, cooking elaborate dinners, like all the things
stuff I didn't care about, but I thought I did. Yeah,
exactly. And it just didn't happen. Like it wasn't like I tried super hard when I had a kid. It was like, oh wait, no, that's not what motherhood is going to look like for me, because I don't care about these things, right? Like it's not what I value. But there's like the guilt that comes along with the mismatched perception of what motherhood what I thought it would look like, not really consciously. And then getting to a point where I've been able to really reflect on that and really think about like, what is this perfect mother I had in my head? And like all the different pieces of that contradict with itself. And it's like, this person doesn't
who
exist.
Is she? Right. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, who is this person anyways? Like, she doesn't even exist, right?
She doesn't exist. It reminds me of kind of an analogy I've been thinking about a lot is, like when there's like a photo of a model and it's just like the most perfect, for society standards, beautiful model. And then you see it's photoshopped and she's like totally made to be like even skinnier and all these things. And it's like, oh wait, this perfect standard that we're looking at, and it's quote perfect. It's not it's some made up standard. But it's like even the most perfect person that they hired and paid to be in this photo shoot doesn't exist. And with motherhood, that's such a reality. Like we see into people's lives, and whether they're being authentic and showing their lives or, putting on a front for social media, we're not seeing all of it.
Right.
And we have to know that we are not, there is no perfect. There is no perfect mom. And the things we value are all different. And so what is important to one person is going to be completely different than what's important to me. And if we're not clear on that, we can't make the decisions that make the most sense for ourselves. So it's really important. And I do feel so fortunate for my kind of entering into motherhood, for giving me the space to kind of reflect on that.
Yeah, I think it's really cool too that you shared that you are teaching as you're learning, right? And you're in the thick of it with a lot of young mothers who are learning and developing what they want their own experience of motherhood to look like. And the important part about this is I feel like the permission to choose, to make decisions, to listen internally. And something that I have always preached and something that I will continue to preach is that you are still an individual outside of, right? You are an individual whose children will actually leave your house at some point. And so while that comes with a little bit of pressure to be more hyper focused on the fact that they are there and this is your like special time with them, it's also a really good reminder that it's not forever. And so what do you want your life to look like? And do you want to feel like as soon as they are leaving your house? And honestly, I'll just argue even too, it's not when they leave their house. I'm very much in a stage. I have 16, 16, 14, 11. And I, maybe in the last year and a half, 2 years, all of a sudden I was like looking around and I'm like, nobody needs me. Like it changed because for the first few years, it's everything mental, physical, emotional, spiritual, like they need you for everything, which is exhausting, right? But also there's so many different phases. And I think protecting yourself as a human and what is calling to you and what is speaking to you and continuing to grow as an individual is actually one of the best gifts that you can give to them and you, right? Because then you're never going to find yourself in this place where you're like, who am I? What, like, or even me, I feel like I've continued to do the work and grow and I've had my, hands in things that feel really important to me. But even when the big change from everything they needed from me to like, it's a joke because I know they still need pieces of me, but it's so different now. But even that transition had me kind of going like, oh, like, who, like, do they love me? Do they need me? Like, what is this, and I still had all my things. So I kind of picture if I didn't, and these could be simple things, right? So when you're working with your clients or you're thinking about yourself, like, what are some ways that we can protect our, individuality as humans and women? And like, I'm Chelsea, right?
There's a few different ways that I really like to talk about this and like think about it.
Yeah.
One of the ways is just that if we think about ourselves up into the point of having children, what did that look like? What were you striving for? And maybe like you had this goal of becoming a parent, right? Like that could very much be what it was. But you have this whole life where you're developing yourself. Like that's what we do as we grow up. And that doesn't stop the moment we have children, right? It's not like, okay, now I have kids and I am no longer a human being that, it doesn't just go away, that pass. And I think it's like, yes, obviously, but I don't think we talk about that enough, that it's like, you still are you. And now there's a lot more to you, right? Like there's this whole other person that you are responsible for and that you are in love with and just all the things. Like it's a huge transformation, but it doesn't like take away everything from before. And so I think talking about that and really getting clear on that as an individual, like putting yourself in that position of like, hey, I am still me. And it may feel very hard for me to even access that part of myself and to even think about who I was before I had kids. But just knowing that it's there can be such a powerful just piece, I guess, like kind of giving yourself permission to try things, to try to access that part of yourself, to just reflect on like, what do I need? What do I want? I think a lot about our needs and how we have different levels of needs. There's our basic needs that we have to survive, but really like those pieces that fill our soul and, the things that those connections with people, those things that we're like giving to the world, those are needs as well. And so allowing yourself to like say, you know what, my needs are not being met. That's why I'm having a hard time with all of this. It's because I'm not doing things for me.
Right. And that's it. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. Well, just it's getting clear on that is the first step. I think that's really important. And you show up better for your kids when your needs are met. And we don't have to do things because we're going to show up better for our kids, but it's a bonus, right? It's like you want to be the best mom to your kids. And so, if you pour into yourself and if you do the things to bring you that joy and you do the things to make sure that you're feeling fulfilled as a human, well, bonus, your kids are going to get that impact. So that's one way I like to think about it.
Well, and I think too, it's a really important lesson to teach our children that they are responsible for their feelings. They are responsible for their growth. They are responsible, and it's not responsible in a negative way. It's actually you have the power to right to determine how you feel, what your growth looks like. And I actually love to picture that as your children come into this world and you're their mother, like you get to grow alongside each other. And it shouldn't be that you're stopping your personal growth at the, just so that they can grow, but you can grow together. And it can be so like such a beautiful experience. And it will be met with some resistance, right? There will be some times when maybe they're going to be asking for something that maybe in that moment you are, distracted by something else that's important to you. And it's a give and take. And I've experienced that too, like knowing that there will be times when maybe you're like questioning and it feels bad because they're like, I want this right now. And so learning how to set expectations for them and for you, and then sticking to the plan. Like if you're busy working on something, I always try to be like, if I said I'm going to be done in 10 minutes, I'm going to be done in 10 minutes, so that they trust me, that they are willing to be patient and giving me that space and that time, so that I can turn and be like, okay, my 10 minutes is done. Thank you for waiting. Here I am. Right. And was I perfect at that? No. But I just think knowing that there will probably be some resistance, but it's also they're learning valuable lessons in that.
Absolutely. I think there's so many things we can do, like picturing our children and like what the goal is. Like when we're, we have these kids and we're raising them, we want to do the best for them. And it's like, what is the goal? And obviously we don't want to like set too stringent of goals for our children, like who we want them to be when they grow up. But if you think about it, like you probably do want them to be a somewhat independent person who doesn't rely on other people to get their needs met. And I think most of us can agree that that's the end goal. As an adult, we want them to be able to do those things. And we also want them to be able to manage their emotions. We want them to be able to accept themselves when they don't manage their emotions, when they do like kind of lose their cool. Just not feel like, oh, I'm a horrible person for that. And those are all things we want for our kids. And so knowing, first of all, that we can show them, model for them how to be kind of independent, how to do the things that we need to do for ourselves, while also teaching them along the way how to be independent and how to not rely on us for every little thing that they may not need to rely on us for.
Right.
But also going into like when we do mess up, when we do have moments where we're like, oh, yep, that was not the way to handle that. Or, I really was not giving them the attention that I needed to. Being able to say, hey, you know what? I'm sorry.
Right.
Like, what a gift to apologize to your child. What a gift to when you maybe like snap because your needs aren't being met and it's like, you're just not a perfect human, and that's okay.
Yeah.
To be able to say, oh, yeah, that was not how we handle that. I'm going to try better, and I'm going to do better. And like, modeling that for them so that they know that like, okay, I'm also probably going to grow up and be flawed because that's just how it goes. And so teaching them kind of what to expect in adulthood. It's important. And I don't think it benefits our kids to see us as this perfect person who has it all together.
An expert.
It's just, it's just not, they're not going to grow up to have it all together. Like we're humans. We are. Yeah. So I think that's a really like important way to look at things, and just like looking at how you are showing up for your kids. It's not just about like in the moment how you're showing up for them, but as a person and like the person that you are showing them. It's so permission giving, and there's just so much for them to learn from us, and all the things. It's not just the good things.
Yeah. And I actually I'll say to my kids, like, this is the first time I've ever been a mom to a 16-year-old. This is the first time I've ever, or like, this is the first time I've ever been your mom, even the younger ones, this is the first time we're experiencing this actually together. So let's be open about this. Let's have a conversation. Like, tell me what you're feeling like. I'll tell you. Is there anything that you're waiting for me to apologize for that maybe I don't even understand or didn't know? Just that open conversation, the communication, I think is one of the most powerful tools that I've been able to experience in motherhood.
100% agree.
So as you're looking back and you're like, okay, I decided to change the way that I was seeing this. And now I'm like in this different space over here where I feel a little bit more like myself. I feel a little bit like, what has that done for you?
You know, it's really like wild, and just in the bigger picture of feeling like just in life, not just in motherhood, but just in
Right.
life, that I'm finally like doing things for myself and allowing myself to see potential in the world that is just never was, I being told growing up, oh, you can do whatever you want. I did well
Mm,
in school. It's like, you can do whatever you want. I'm like, I don't know what I want to do. Like,
mm,
it was so limited, what I allowed myself to see. And just feeling, I think, confident and comfortable enough with myself to say, yeah, I can look beyond what the shoulds are and try things, like whatever that looks like for me. And know that, like, it's okay if I fail. It's okay if, again, I do something that I don't love the way I handled the situation with my kids, or try something, take a risk on something. It's like, oh, that didn't work. Just I just feel there's so much power, and I feel like I have control over my life in a way that I never did before.
it feels
Um,
a little bit like freedom to me.
yes,
Like the word
yes,
freedom kind of comes up for me because I
yeah.
feel like I remember when my sister, bless her heart, if she's listening to this, I love you so much. But like at one point, she decided to get a puppy, right?
Hmm.
And I kept saying to her, at the end of the day, it's a dog, like it's a puppy, right? And she wrote out a schedule for the dog. She wouldn't go to lunch with her friends because she was afraid she might miss like puppy potty time. She like let it actually control her life to the like extreme that 7 days after she had the dog, she was like, I can't do this. Like it literally broke her. Right. And that's the thing is like, I think something that is so wonderful is that our children come into our lives to be a part of our lives, but they don't come into our lives to like feel like these horrible chains that build up resentment for, that we have these thoughts and feelings like, don't you see everything I'm doing for you? Like, why don't you love me enough, or why don't you tell me thank you enough, or whatever. Like if we approach it from a way where it is like no freedom at all, right? There's not a freedom to be yourself or to experience joy and happiness and fulfillment, then we turn resentful, even, or we turn codependent, right? There's like this whole other
Hmm.
episode we could talk about the danger of like codependency, whether it's the mom or the child or both or whatever. But it's like I see freedom in you and in your message that you're growing alongside of each other, that you are, you can enjoy this process of raising the children and be an example to them. And like it's like working together to, become the most beautiful, fullest versions of yourself. And I think that's really, really great.
I love the way, when someone like reflects something back to you, that you're
Yeah.
like, yes, like you just said that in a way that I've never thought of it, but it is so accurate. It really is like we have the freedom to make choices. I think that's
Hmm.
really so much of what it comes down to, is like whatever you're doing right now, whatever your life looks like, knowing
Hmm.
the role you've played in that and that you continue to play in that, and not saying that making decisions that are different than what you're currently doing is easy, but just knowing
Yeah.
that like we have constant opportunity to decide something different. And I think there's just so much, like, it's so much power and so much freedom in that. It's
Yeah.
really a beautiful, slightly scary, but
Right.
also just a really empowering thing.
Because I do want to touch on the fact that you might be met with some resistance from your mom, from
Mm-hmm.
your mother-in-law, from your friends, from your siblings who maybe do something different. And I don't want this to feel like negative in any way, but I just want to bring awareness to the fact that when you choose to do something differently, they might be triggered in the way that they never actually even, it never occurred to them that they could choose something different, right? Maybe they were doing what their moms did. They were doing what they saw their older siblings do. They were doing what they thought. And then all of a sudden you're doing something different. And they're like, wait, hold on. There was options. And they're not going to say that to you like, wait, there's options. They're going to say like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, why aren't you doing it like this? or like, oh, like, don't you feel like maybe, you know, the passive aggressive statements, they might come. But the reason why I want to bring that up is because it's just because it never occurred to them that it could be done differently. And it's okay. And you can, and you don't need to meet them with more like anger or like you don't have to fight back at all. In fact, you can say like, oh, you know, I see that you're concerned about this. And like, I just want to tell you that I really feel so good about the way that we're doing this. And it might not make sense to you, and that's okay. But just like, if you could trust me on this, like I am being very mindful and prayerful and thoughtful about the way that I'm showing up. And I'm going to allow you to do what feels right and good to you, right? Like we can set that boundary in a kind way, but just knowing that it's coming from a place of them like, wait, hold on. No one told me I could do it different, right?
Yeah, like we all are impacted by the context that we live in. And if we don't choose something different, or if we don't choose to see something different, we don't see something different. And so when you get pushback from other people, approaching it with both grace to know that it's not like them as an individual, but it's them as an individual in this context. And then also, to know that like, it's okay to have boundaries. It's okay to not share certain things with certain people. Like, it's totally okay to kind of make those choices for yourself. And I think holding both of those things together is where the power is. And to know that like, I get to feel the way I feel about my decisions. And I also get to allow in other people's opinions or not.
Yep. And we get to choose like how we respond to them. We get to choose like, you know, if we're allowing them into our lives enough to even see it, because that's another thing. It's like, maybe we need to set the boundaries of, if they're not if they're not listening and they're not respecting, then maybe they just need a little bit less access to our lives. But which is practice. We just have to practice all of these things. We have to be really intentional and mindful, think about them, get clear on what we want our lives to look like and what feels good, and that we can trust ourselves, right? Like each of us are so different. And as long as we go back to that trust that we have within us, then we're going to be able to make the right decisions. And when we make decisions that all of a sudden don't feel right, we're going to know, and we're going to be able to make changes and try something else. And I think that's just so beautiful. So I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your experience and your continued experience as you're raising your beautiful boys. Like, I'm so happy that you were able to figure this out early on, but it's never too late. I do think that, right? It's never too late to choose something new, to kind of change the narrative, or try something, or to invest in yourself, to take that time. Like today, you can take time for yourself and say like, what parts of me have I abandoned because I didn't think they were important enough or valuable enough, but now I want to, right?
Yes. And just have so much grace and so much self-compassion for yourself in that journey too, because again, it's not just you. It's not just that you chose to let go of these parts of yourself. There's so many factors in it. And so to really just say, you know what, I'm going to put the effort into me, and I'm going to mess up sometimes, and it's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. Like, at least I'm trying, and at least I'm doing it, and you will grow from it. Yeah, I think that's the beautiful thing, is that the growth is inevitable. But just making sure that you're not making it one more thing to just put pressure on yourself of like, oh, I'm going to make sure I'm happy every day. It's like, no, that's not the goal. Right. I think there's so much space for just like the self-acceptance and then the growth from there.
It's so good. Thank you so much for that. Okay. So this kind of goes along with this, is the phrase that's important to me is fire in her heart, peace in her soul. And it's the idea that you can dance with both of those things, right? Like you can have things that are lighting your heart on fire that you are excited to do and wake up to and work on. And then also how important it is to protect that piece of our soul. And sometimes when we are out of integrity with ourselves, the way that we're living and showing up and not showing up for ourselves, we lose that peace, that internal peace. And I want mothers, I want women, I want everyone to have both of those things. So my question for you is, what is one thing that is currently lighting your heart on fire?
I mean, it is conversations like this, no doubt. That's a big reason why I started my own podcast, and just getting to have conversations with other moms about their experiences and their like knowledge and all of that. I mean, just even connecting with other women who have businesses, just all of the connection and the conversation that I get to have, it just like seriously lights me up in a way that is kind of undescribable, and something that I always dreamed I would have something like that I was so passionate about. To be like living that just feels good.
Yes. And I will say connection outside of motherhood is one of the most important things you can do for yourself, whether it is park play dates and talking to mothers, if it's on the phone, if it's in business, if it's through podcasts, whatever it is. So I love that you brought that up as something that's lighting your heart on fire, because that's not talked about enough, right? Like human connection is a basic need. And if it's not being met, then you're going to feel it. So I love that. And what is something that you do to protect the peace of your soul?
Okay, I'm going to give kind of a like abstract answer here, but I think I've just done a lot of work, and I can't even really narrow down what exactly that work has been, but in a lot of work into accepting like my own beliefs about myself as the truth, and
I love that.
Knowing that I can listen to other people, and I can respect their opinions about things, and learn from them. But knowing that it all comes back to me with my life. And so protecting like the version of myself that I want to protect and that I want to like hold as truth, because that's all that matters, right? It really only matters how I see myself. And that's been like a huge journey. And it feels really good to stand in the confidence to say, like, I know who I am, and I know that I'm always going to be growing, and I'm, never going to be happy with all the little pieces of me, but I can accept it all. And I can know that my version of me is the truth. And so
that's so good. There's a thing that says there's 3 versions of each of us. It's the way we see ourselves, the way others see us, and the way we think others see us. And we often operate from a place of the way we think other people see us, when we actually have no clue what that looks like. And also the way that others see us, they don't actually see the whole picture. So it doesn't matter either. And so the thing that we can and should come back to, and I'm going to use a should there, even though we talked about this, but the most healthy, beautiful way to see ourselves is just the way that we see ourselves, that we know about ourselves, that even with the flaws or even with the things we want to improve on, that we still are valuable and wonderful and full of so much potential and love and truly trying our best, right?
I got like chills when you said that whole thing. Just like,
yeah,
it's so important.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I made a whole clothing brand subscription company. It's called UA, and it's all about the relationship. It's you and you, the relationship that you have with yourself. The most important relationship you will ever have is that one that you have within yourself, and it develops because of intention. So I'm just and love and grace, right? Like you mentioned. So it's important to me. I loved what you shared about it. And I think that this message is so important. So I hope that all of you listening had some really good takeaways for you. And I just want to encourage you to like do some internal work and some reflection, and really know that all the answers, all the wants, the desires, and the love, compassion is all within you, and you can find it, and you can show up for yourself and everyone around you in the most beautiful way when you truly see it for what it is.
I love it.
Thank you.